What's going on, FA Nation? Welcome back. This is the Fantasy Alarm NASCAR DFS podcast. I am Dan Malin, and I am joined, as always, by Matt Selz, our resident FSWA three-time NASCAR Writer of the Year. Matt, how's it going? What'd you think of the first road course race of the season for NASCAR?
I thought it was better than people give it credit for. Clearly didn't rate very well in Jeff Gluck's poll. I understand some people probably fell asleep during the third stage. But I thought there was more strategy to it than maybe, casuals would pick up on. I thought it was okay. I'm not sure exactly what happened in DFS last week. I thought we had a decent read on the race and then nothing.
I think what killed a lot of people was Michael McDowell.
Yeah, McDowell did not it was not great. Like I said, I was at my daughter's birthday party last week, hosting it, so I was only checking in. Periodically I watched part of the end of stage 3 on the way home. But yeah, like 5 laps into the race, I get on NASCAR's app and McDowell's all the way dead last, and he's already like 3 laps back. So I'm like, this is great. Thanks, McDowell.
I think what killed me was that, the consensus going into the race was that, if you were going to play anybody up front, you would play one of 3 guys, and that was William Byron, Ty Gibbs, Tyler Reddick. I played Gibbs and Reddick. I didn't have any shares of William Byron in my 20 lineups. Obviously, he led plenty of laps. I don't even think he had the best car. It was maybe like a top 4, top 5, top 6 car. But his pit crew was great once again, and he maintained track position. And with, as is the case with road courses, when the field gets, spread out far enough and you can get a long green flag run. And COTA has plenty of places that a car can run off. Really, the only thing that's going to throw a caution for COTA is if a car is stalled on the track. So even with, all the
Or
track limit penalties.
Back into the racing line. Then yes.
Right. But, with all things considered, Byron may not have needed the best car, and that was clearly the case, and he still got a win. And so with, me being overweight on McDowell, not having any shares of Byron, I knew it was probably going to be a bloodbath. It wasn't as bad as I was anticipating. But, now we go to a track like Richmond, which for years was always one of my weaker tracks. And I think we finally tapped into, the success and not going so heavy on, starting drivers deeper in the field. You can build really good contrarian lineups with a race like Richmond, where we get 400 laps, kind of a high tire wear track for a short track, which is, and this is actually, isn't this a track where your wife's family kind of has some ties to it?
Yes, my wife's uncle used to be the president of Richmond Raceway. He is no longer that. He still works in NASCAR. He actually left Richmond to go to Iowa to try to bring a cup race to Iowa, and then didn't think it was going to happen. And now they have a cup race this year. But yes, this is the track my wife grew up going to. She watched plenty of races sitting in booths next to Denny Hamlin's grandmother.
Nice.
She likes the grandmother way more than Denny.
I'm sure a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah. A lot of people probably do. Yeah, it is a high tire wear track. It is by far the highest tire wear of any of the short tracks. I would say it probably comps better to tracks like Nashville and Phoenix and Gateway and New Hampshire than, say, Martinsville. Certainly doesn't comp to Bristol because that's high banked and this is very flat. So the only question I really have is it's known as the action track. Just how much action are we actually going to get here this year? Because that's kind of been the thing that's dogged Richmond the last few years, is that they seemingly put on boring races. It can be a little bit follow the leader at times. Hopefully tire wear helps, because we saw, if we get tire wear like Bristol and we get comers and goers and passes and all sorts, then this is going to be a spectacular night race. But if we don't get a lot of tire wear, it might be a little bit follow the leader-ish, kind of like Phoenix was.
I guess we can just lead off with the fact that, the Xfinity Series race is, I think, the Toyota Care 250.
Correct.
The Sunday night cup race is the Toyota Owners 400. Needless to say, this is a race every year that means a lot to Joe Gibbs Racing, yeah?
Yeah, Toyotas are the basically home manufacturer for this race. For what it's worth, like they are the sponsor, right? It's like Michigan with Ford. Richmond is for Toyota for whatever reason. Um, and it's borne fruit, right? Toyota has done very, very well here of late. This is also a night race, so when we're studying data and when you're reading the playbook, I'm going to be mainly mentioning night races at Richmond because the track races differently at night than it does during the day. We'll get to a driver who epitomizes that here in a little bit. But yes, Toyotas are, if you look at DK Sportsbook, they are the favorite. All four Joe Gibbs drivers are the top four favorites to win. So, not that we are banking, not that we only play Toyotas, but if you're torn between manufacturers, maybe lean Toyota because this race, they put a lot into it for this weekend.
Yeah, I think even when you look at pricing, which we'll dive deeper shortly, the three most expensive drivers are Joe Gibbs Racing and Ty Gibbs, who hasn't been priced in the 9K range all year, is bumped up to a flat 10K, which is very high praise for him.
Yeah, we just had MLB opening day. It's like watching Victor Scott skip AAA and go right to the majors. He skipped. He was in AA in the 8K range, and now he's in the majors at the 10K range. Completely skipped AAA there for Ty Gibbs. so,
So I guess
it pay off though. Like it's not an out of bounds jump for him. He's put up no less than 44 points a race.
Yeah, especially when you look at what he did at Bristol. That was a race with 500 laps, and he led 137. This one only has 400, but still plenty to go around. And it's not like even at Phoenix, we saw all four Joe Gibbs Racing drivers lead at least 50 laps. And so, I get the notion by DraftKings Sportsbook to list them all as the early favorites, and so it's warranted for Gibbs. It's just I hate that we're missing out on the value on Gibbs when he hasn't gotten a win yet. But the books, and the DFS sites are catching on. So I can't say I necessarily blame them for pricing the kid up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk that he was probably going to get his first win at Coda last week. He came reasonably close. I mean,
got third.
He got third. He started on the front row. So we'll see. I don't think this is a particularly terrible track for Ty Gibbs. He's in really good form. All of the Toyotas right now are pretty quick. We'll talk about a couple guys in the Toyota camp that I'm less sure of, but so in terms of building lineups here, we have 400 laps.
Yeah.
Right. I would think that we could go for a two dominator build.
For sure.
Last fall, for example, we had Keselowski started 13th and led 102 laps. Buescher started 26th and led 88. And Bubba started 5th and led 80. And then you had Reddick on the pole, also led 81 laps. So, I'm not saying go with four dudes, but I think you definitely need at least two laps led dominated.
And I think you can absolutely do two. I think where you're going to have trouble is finding a third. However, Brad Keselowski's price in relation to his betting odds jumps off the page and kind of screams that he's a great value on DraftKings at 8,200, which is roughly what the average price tag for a driver. But when I checked, we're recording this Friday morning. He was getting 12-1 odds to win outright, while his teammate Chris Buescher, I believe, was getting 13-1. So that's slightly longer than Brad, and yet Brad is $1,100 cheaper than Buescher on DraftKings.
Yeah, nice of DK to separate them for once.
Yeah,
they actually put some breathing room between them. That is interesting to me though, because Buescher did win the last night race here.
Correct. Yep.
So, it is interesting that you would have Brad. Now, I don't think there's any arguing that Keselowski's been in better form this year than Buescher in general, just in terms of overall speed. It seems like Keselowski's more consistently fast right now than Buescher. But yeah, I do think in the mid tier, Keselowski, you could do way worse than Keselowski in the mid tier for sure.
So we're largely going with two dominator builds. Brad Keselowski early on looking like a solid, tertiary dominator as well. If you're aiming to squeeze three into your builds, but let's just dig in, start previewing the drivers because as we've already talked up the Toyota drivers, there's some we like, there's some we don't. Who are you jumping at? Who are you targeting first?
Pretty hard not to like Truex, to be honest.
Yeah,
Night race,
especially at night.
Yeah, night race Truex is a different Truex, especially here. I believe Ryan from iFantasy Racing put out the tweet that said Truex has won 3 of the last 4 night races at Richmond, and then finished second in the other one. So pretty hard not to like him. I got a top 5 bet on him at BetMGM for -110.
That's pretty good.
It's about the shortest odds I've seen on that one. Not even worth betting the top 10, by the way, because last time I checked, he was the shortest odds were -250, and DK had him -400 for a top 10. Going like Verstappen-ish odds there. So I would probably start with Truex. He's probably going to be the most popular one because everybody knows he usually shows up here.
Is this also one of his 7 home tracks?
I don't think so. It's one that used to give him fits. He was 0 for 81 in his career on short tracks, and then he reeled off 7 of 10 wins or something. He's
Nice.
been money over the last 4 years at short tracks. No, I just think consistency wise here, he has a very good car. He ran very well at Bristol, obviously, a little different. Okay. But he also ran pretty well at Phoenix, which is a comparable track. He put up back-to-back 74-point weeks between Phoenix and Bristol.
Yeah.
And that was in the 8K. Well, 9. Yeah, that was bizarre. He was 9,800 at Phoenix, put up 74 points, and then dropped down to 8,800 at Bristol and still put up 74 points.
Yeah.
But no, I would look at him because he's also going to give you a little bit of savings over Seabell and Hamlin.
Anyone else, maybe any non-Joe Gibbs Racing drivers that you're intrigued with? I mean, there's only 2 in the 10K range, which is William Byron and Kyle Larson. Larson can't remember which one. He basically won the Richmond race that Chris Buescher obviously did not win last year.
Yeah, he won the spring one.
Byron coming off his second win of the season, but aside from that, it's not like he won the Daytona 500, then he won COTA, 2 wins. But aside from that, the other 4 races, I don't know, kind of ho-hum, nothing great. Bristol was brutal for him, despite getting 30 fastest laps. But I don't know, is this necessarily a track that you're loving any Hendrick Motorsports driver? I kind of like Chase and Bowman for the savings and their track history, but Larson did get a win here a year ago. But overall, I think everyone's just kind of drawn to the Toyotas for this race.
Yeah, I think there's room for. We were talking about getting weird with lineup builds and getting counter to the field. This is where a little bit of the room comes in. I think Kyle Busch in the Chevy camp is also intriguing. Obviously, he had not a great day at Bristol. Just walked out without talking to anybody. So there's a
well, he talked to Christopher Bell on pit road for sure.
Well, at COTA.
Oh, yeah.
Bristol, he just parked in the infield and walked out. But yes, he talked to Christopher Bell, who looked like he was crying afterwards.
Kid looked just so scared.
He looked incredibly scared. But by the way, what the hell was Kyle Busch doing on that turn? He took the non-racing line. Seabell had the if you watch who went through the corner first, was it Eric Jones that went through?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Somebody went through and he was on basically the same line as Christopher Bell, and then Kyle Busch came from the top rope and cut down and got pissed. It's bro, you didn't have the racing line. I don't know. So we'll have to see how Kyle Busch practices. But
the interesting thing is that for Busch last year in his first year with Richard Childress Racing, he did start P2 in both Richmond races, finished third in the summer race.
yeah, so there's some hope there, but I'm concerned about the short track package that we saw um, at Bristol, and he didn't exactly move up that well at Phoenix either. He started 31st, 22nd, so with no fastest laps, obviously no laps led. So there's some questions there.
How do we dissect what happened at Bristol? Because didn't they run the intermediate package for that race?
They did run the intermediate package. There was a lot of high tire wear, so there's kind
Yeah.
of that. But it was, I mean, again, Bristol doesn't really comp to Richmond because it's high banked.
Correct.
The distance, I don't really care. They're qualified as short tracks. But Bristol comps more to Dover than anything else because of the high bank and concrete. But Phoenix, again, didn't see Kyle Busch move up that well either. So I like Chase. I'm going to be a wait and see on Bowman.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this before the podcast. Bowman seems almost like a better bet, if anything, just because I think he was 45 to 1 on DraftKings Sportsbook. He does have a win here from 3 years ago. Back to back, finishes of P4 at Bristol and Coda. So from a DFS perspective, he's actually been doing pretty well. Not really getting out front too often, but still has a win here. Is there anybody in this 8K to 9,700 range? We've already talked about Busch, touched on Buescher a little bit. We mentioned that there were some Toyota drivers that we don't like, and Tyler Reddick is 8,700, which is actually a really nice price tag, but you do have concerns for 23XI, correct?
Yeah, 2311 hasn't nabbed a top 10 finish at Richmond in their team history, which is concerning. It doesn't mean they haven't been running in the top 10. They've run in the top 10. Obviously, I said Bubba led laps, started 5th, didn't finish in the top 10. So there's some risk there. Doesn't mean they can't lead. Like, I think Reddick led laps too. But they tend to fall off late for whatever reason, whether it be pit strategy or making way for the boss man to come through. I don't know. But there's some, I'm not saying they're off the board. I'm just saying we got to be careful. Maybe, they're certainly not cash plays, even though the price is pretty decent on Reddick. And Bubba's getting better at short tracks. I would leave them for GPPs, knowing there's a reasonable chance they go backwards and hoping that chance doesn't happen. Right. But I don't know. Keselowski, we touched on. He's in this range. I don't know what to make of Blaney. Sorry, Ralph. Did run well at Phoenix. So there is that. But he also doesn't typically run very well at Richmond. In fact, I'm pretty sure he stated that this is his worst track. Like, this is.
I remember 2 years ago, that was kind of a narrative where he said that he hated this track, didn't love it. He qualified on the pole for the first next-gen car race. Finished 7th, so it wasn't terrible, but that's also his only career finish of P8 or better in 15 races at Richmond. But he did lead 128 laps in that race. So if you played him in DFS, I believe he was probably in the optimal lineup if you just ate the chalk and took the early dominator points. But overall, I think you are correct. If you take away
last summer, for what it's worth,
but if you also take away that one race in 2022, the spring race, in the other 14 races, he has just 3 laps led here, and his best finish is 10th. So if he qualifies in the top 12, kind of a tough play.
I would let other people play him and just you sit. It's like the guy you nominate that you don't want to draft.
Yeah.
And you let other people bid for him. Take the money off the board. Okay, there's 9,700 off the board. Let's move on to somebody else. 95. Yeah, I just think it's one of the weeks where if he wins or does well, okay, he sorted something out. You can't know. So I don't know. I'm kind of off Blaney this week at this point.
In the 7K range below Bubba Wallace, who we did briefly touch on, we have Chase Briscoe, 7,600, Josh Berry, 75, and Noah Gragson, 71. Ryan Preece is 65. These are the 4 SHR drivers. I'm pretty interested in Chase Briscoe. At this price, there is top 12 equity. We were talking before the podcast. I said I need to stop betting long shot outrights for NASCAR, and then I went and put about a half unit on Chase Briscoe at 70-1.
Yeah. No, we were
Couldn't
talking
resist.
in the last 3 similar tracks, right? So to reiterate, or if I haven't said it yet, we're looking at Phoenix, we're looking at Richmond, we're looking at New Hampshire, we're looking at Gateway, and we're looking at Nashville. Those are kind of in the same distance, kind of same flatness, same tire wear type, tough passing conditions. In the last 3 of those races, Briscoe has 3 top 11 finishes, 2 are 10th and 9th. And if you go back 6 races, he has a P7 in there too. So he has 4 top 10s in the last 6 similar races. So that's kind of intriguing. Would I like to see him a little cheaper? Sure. But he did nab a top 10 at Phoenix a couple of races ago and put up 35 points at 7,800. So almost hit value there.
I actually like how well he's been qualifying the car too.
I would
in 4 of his last 5 races, he's qualified inside the top 10. Last week, it's a road course, so the qualifying sessions in general are kind of weird, just because every car is pretty much on the track, or they divide it into 2 sessions for qualifying. And
Right.
he started P32. But overall, it's like he finished 13th at Coda, 13th at Bristol, 9th at Phoenix. So, yeah, I mean, I don't really have so much an issue with the price tag. It would be great if he was like 71 to 73, just open up a little salary.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping for. It's like a
little. But at the end of the day, I think I could still,
yeah,
I can pay that price for him because he's got win equity from Phoenix from a couple of years ago. And as you mentioned, runs pretty well on what we consider the comparable tracks.
Right. I guess the other thing is, if everybody else thinks he's a little too highly priced, then people avoid him, and then you get leverage on the field.
Right.
Barry's an interesting case. He finished very well here when he was filling in for Chase Elliott, but not so great in his SHR equipment. So is this? I know we usually don't talk equipment that much in the Cup Series like we do in Truck or Xfinity, because it doesn't make as huge of a difference.
Yeah.
But switching from a well-oiled machine like Hendrick to a team still figuring out how to work a car like Stewart-Haas, it has to make a difference, right? I know he grew up in the short track of VA and whatnot, but I don't know. I haven't seen a ton of speed in this car.
I haven't really looked at too much of what Ryan has put out with iFantasy Racing of late, but from the eyeball test, it seems like every race there are 2 good SHR cars, and then there are 2 underwhelming SHR cars.
Yeah.
You can make that argument that for like Vegas and I think maybe Phoenix, it looked like Briscoe and Gragson had the 2 good cars, and where they just nailed the setup because those guys looked fast at those tracks. Coda was such an odd road race, especially with the issues with track limits and things like that. So it's like I almost don't want to like try to figure out who nailed it there. But for me right now, Gragson is interesting to me for SHR just because this is the 10 car. This is Eric Almirola's old car. I'm assuming that they just kept notes on the setups and
the setup.
pretty much. And I'm not saying Gragson is a world beater on the short flats by any means, but this team should know what to do with this car, which is leading me to believe that I'm higher on Briscoe and Gragson if I'm going to go with 2 SHR guys this week. It shouldn't be that hard for the 10 team who you had a driver that was really good on short flat tracks. Just match the setup, see what Gragson can do.
Yep, I would agree. The third one though, Priest, because he's a short tracker.
That's true.
I'm intrigued by that. Not to mention he is like
Cheap.
$600 cheaper than the other 3 guys. But I'm with you. Like, if you're looking at a speed thing, it's clearly been Brisco and Gragson have been the 2 fastest SHR cars, and then Priest in certain weeks. And then I might even say Barry's maybe been consistently the slowest. Like, his best finish was 12th at Bristol, but he started second at Bristol. So going backwards 10 spots to get your best finish isn't great, right? But yeah, the problem with Priest though is that everybody knows he's a short tracker, so he may be like the favorite budget guy because.
Well, what if I offer a pivot to Breeze?
Go ahead.
I kind of like John Hunter Nemechek.
How did I know you were going there?
Not a JGR car, not even a. What's that?
I said I can't say I disagree.
Not a JGR car, not a 2311 car, but still a Toyota. He won here in 2021 in the Truck Series, and then he was second in 2022. In the Xfinity Series in 2021, he finished third with Sam Hunt Racing. That's more of a testament to, I think, Nemechek as a driver than the equipment. And then in 2022 and 2023 in the Xfinity Series, just to be clear, he finished second with Joe Gibbs Racing in both races. And so, I get that the Cup Series is completely different, but he did just finish. He was sporty in the intermediate package at Bristol. I know we're not drawing comparisons to Bristol, but still, it's a Toyota. It's a track that in the lower series, JHN has done well at. And so for 6,400, I'm not saying there's a win here, but if there is a cheap driver in a Toyota that can just stay on the lead lap, maybe go out and grab a top 12, I'm not even ruling out a top 10, it would be John Hunter Nemechek.
Point well made. I have nothing to add.
Thank you.
To that.
Can't say I'm as excited about Eric Jones.
That's true. It's going to be a rare week where I'm not as excited about Eric Jones either. So, there's that.
Do you want to know who strangely has decent track history here?
Who's that?
Austin Dillon.
He does, actually.
Part of it, I think, is that he's qualified. Actually, no, he hasn't. Like last summer, P17, which is good, finished 9th. And then in the spring race a year ago, P27 start, he finished 25th. But in 2022, he finished 16th after qualifying P12. And then in the spring race 2 years ago, first next-gen race that I believe it was Alex Bowman. No, it wasn't Bowman that won. But, he started P25 and grabbed a top 10.
Yeah, if we look at the last 11 similar races to Richmond, which goes back to like the beginning of 2022, Austin Dillon has 5 top 15s and 7 top 20s in that span.
Yeah.
So that's not terrible. I do want to ask you about a guy who's making a return this week.
Oh, God. 1 second. I have to scroll. Are you asking me about Gralla?
No, I'm going to ask you about Ty Dillon.
What is he? Oh, is he in a Colleague car?
In the 16 for Colleague.
Ugh.
He's back.
Those cars have been really bad.
They haven't been great.
Oh, my God.
But Ty Dillon has a decent history. Like, if he qualifies it, I don't know. If he can nab top 25, there's value here.
See, I liked Hemrick to start the year for Colleague, and he rattled off, 3 top 20 finishes to start the year. But even that top 20 at Vegas, I think, was a little lucky because, those cars just, qualified poorly.
Yeah.
Kind of suck.
He did go back with Phoenix.
It's not that I don't like Ty Dillon.
No,
there's some intrigue. But
maybe he had something to prove. I don't know.
You remember when we all were questioning Justin Haley leaving Colleague and now he's with Rick Ware Racing? Like, those cars at times have looked far and away better than the Colleague cars.
Yes. Yeah, we look like we're going to have egg on our face here. But I don't know. We got to get creative in the value tier. So John Hunter Nemechek is reasonable. I don't know. Gilliland again, when am I not going to play Gilliland? That dude just always has a shot for value. Like, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but he does. He generally shows up and has a shot for value at the price tag he shows up at.
I think at the end of the day, though, like it is kind of hard because he only has one race. He put up 25 fantasy points at Vegas, 42 at Phoenix. But other than that, he's kind of been living in the teens.
Yeah, but
I don't know.
Phoenix compares.
It's true. It's true.
And then, I mean, I don't want to base everything off of one race, but like he's also got, 3 top 20s in the last, 11 similar races, which is okay. I mean, for a guy at that price point, you don't need a world beater, because if he was a world beater, he wouldn't be at that price point.
Right.
Right. So you need a guy who has a shot for it and has done it before, and he has. So there's that. I don't know. The value tier is going to be quite important this week, though.
One thing we haven't really talked about is they are practicing qualifying early Saturday morning, and this race is Sunday night.
Correct.
What are we necessarily taking away from practice and qualifying Saturday morning for a race that's going to be probably running completely different conditions? Are we going to write off guys that look bad in practice and qualifying because they could just be set up for race trim?
That's true, because it's obviously Easter weekend. Happy Easter to those who celebrate. So they are practicing at 10 a.m. Eastern Saturday morning. Then they're all probably going to pack up, go home, go back to Charlotte, which is like 4 or 5 hours down the road. Go get some family time with the kids or significant others or whoever for Easter. And then the Cup Garage does not open again until 4 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. So they're like not showing back up to the track until 3 hours before green flag drops on Sunday night. So I would imagine that there are guys that want to qualify well because they don't think they'll be able to move up and they want the track position, and they will trim it for qualifying. And then there are those who are going to go, well, we're not going to have time to adjust anything. It's going to be an impound race. So let's set up for race trim in practice, hope we can qualify decently, and then make up ground on Sunday. So I would take everything with a grain of salt. I mean, that's tough to say for this weekend, right? Because we get cars on track. I don't want to base everything off of track history. But at the same time, you're right. They're two totally different. At one point the sun's going to be out, the other it's not. The temps are going to be different. The track reacts differently at night. It takes rubber differently for a night race than it does during a day race. Tire wear is different. I am curious to watch the fall off during practice because it is a short track, so they should be able to get 20-25 lap runs done. So watch the time fall off from the first lap to the last lap of a run to see how tire wear is happening. But I'm with you. Just because a guy shows up and has a poor practice or poor qualifying, if there's track history there, then we're still fine. If there's not and they have a terrible practice, like Ryan Blaney. Let's say Ryan Blaney shows up and does not run well. Sorry. Not because this is also not your track, right? But like if Truex shows up and he's only like 15th fastest and people are like, oh, I can't spend that. No, man, they probably set up for the long run for the race, and that guy's track history is immaculate, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to depend on track history, who we've learned to trust, and generally what teams do, because you're right, sometimes like Penske has fully admitted that they generally don't show up for qualifying trim, they generally show up for race trim. So knowing that, I would not expect Team Penske drivers to run that well at practice, but they may run better in the race because they've done that practically all season.
I'm trying to see what paint scheme Martin Truex Jr. has for Sunday night's race because
are you tying wins to paint schemes?
There's that narrative with Truex and that one paint scheme he has. I can't remember the sponsor, so I'm just trying to confirm it. but it is there's some momentum.
It used to be the Kyle Busch
M&Ms or something,
no,
or was it
Enterprise,
Snickers?
the green interstate battery.
Oh, okay.
It was like the interstate. Every time he showed up in the interstate battery car, he led he flat dominated, and then so that's when you wanted to play him. Now we're letting our baseball fandom get in the way of NASCAR with superstitions.
How many cars do you think finished on the lead lap?
Oh, God. It better be more than Bristol. There were 5 at Bristol.
Yeah. But again,
it's going to be less than Coda, but more than Bristol. How about that?
I don't know. Bristol was like such a great race, though. So it's like I'm not mad that there were only so few guys that finished on the lead lap.
It was mainly late race pits that kind of put guys down a little bit, and then they couldn't really make it up. Checking how many dudes finished on the lead lap in Phoenix. Let's see. So you had Stenhouse finished 21st on the lead lap, and Kyle Busch finished 22nd, 1 lap down at Phoenix. So you had 21 dudes on the lead lap at Phoenix. I think we probably see 15 to 20 lead lap cars.
Yeah, it's the auto owner's insurance paint scheme that I'm trying to figure out if Trux has for Sunday night's race.
NASCAR.com doesn't have the paint.
I tried searching. I tried to hit all the popular, the trendy SEO terms, just to find out what paint scheme. And usually that's released by now, but I can't find anything.
Yeah, man.
But if Truex is running a race at night at Richmond with the auto owner's insurance paint scheme, lock it in. He's going to win it 6-1 DraftKings Sportsbook.
There you go. It all comes down to paint schemes. Doesn't matter.
Right, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what they do in practice. Doesn't matter if they set it up for race trim. Paint schemes are aerodynamically more beneficial for some drivers.
Yep. That's exactly what it comes down to.
Yeah. Any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, we'll have to note his paint scheme, and then that'll be the entire playbook. Martin Truex Jr.
Yeah. You take out a second mortgage.
We're done. We're done. That's it. Nobody else. Just play him 6 times over. No. We'll have the normal content out. Everybody enjoy your Easter. And don't be afraid to get a little weird with these lineups, because sometimes the weird ones hit at Richmond.
Yeah, a lot of my best Richmond lineups are the ones that can nail the 2 dominators, but also just starting guys that start no deeper than P25. It can be tough to pass here. People will lose laps. There are going to be guys that just mismanage the tires, have a mistake on pit road. I mean, be mindful. This is a short track, so it's hard to gain track position, and it's very easy to lose it.
Yeah. However, I will say, just as one more wrench in if chaos breaks out, like we sort of had last summer, you can in fact start pretty far back and move up, because Buescher won the race from 26th, Logano finished 4th from 23rd, you had Almirola start 24th and finish 8th, so you had guys move up. You've also seen Josh Berry start in the 30s and finish 2nd here, so it's possible, but it does take a special drive and absolutely perfect conditions for that to happen.
Nice. Well, Matt, as always, good stuff, and thank you for your time. Best of luck to you this Easter for the Toyota Owners 400, and best of luck to the FA Nation.
Best of luck, FA Nation.